Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you have been enjoying your Wednesday. A little bit different tonight. We're testing out streaming on our website, YouTube, and Facebook at the same time. So once we get this down, it'll make our Sunday morning worships a little bit better, which means that we won't be doing trivia. We'll be just doing the message tonight. I know that's a little bit different, but I can't do streaming to all three and still have people interact. So we're just going to go with this, and we'll pick up back on trivia the week after, and we'll kind of talk about the future of that as the church starts to open up a little bit more. But we are going to continue on in week 3 of our Atypical series, and we're going to talk about having tough conversations with our family this week. I want to maybe answer this in your head, right? There's some conversations that are just awkward, right? Sometimes you want to go up and say something, or maybe you did something embarrassing and you really just don't want to talk about it. But then there's conversations that are just difficult to have, right? I'm talking about the type of conversations where there was conflict and pain. Maybe you made a bad decision, or maybe you need to apologize. And so those are the ones that we're going to talk about, the difficult ones, the ones where you really don't want to do it. You might be in the wrong. The other person might be in the wrong, but nobody wants to come forward and change it. And I want you to ask yourself, how often do you have these conversations with your family? Sometimes, often, never. And how do you feel about them? Do you love them? Do they stress you out? Or you just simply can't do it because, that's too embarrassing, too stressful, whatever it might be. And there's going to be conversations that have popped up. I had them when I was younger with my family, and I've had them with Carrie as we're trying to start a new family and a new routine. These conversations are going to be coming out through your entire life. And so we've been talking the past few weeks that every family is atypical. No family is perfect. And because no family is perfect, every family is going to have these tough conversations eventually. And maybe they happen because of difference in opinion, an unwise choice, someone might have hurt somebody else's feelings, misunderstanding, whatever the reason might be. Remember that these are difficult ones, right? And typical families are going to avoid them, or when they go into them, they're going to go in trying to win the argument, and they don't go very well. Whereas atypical families, they're going to approach those conversations a little bit differently. And so the last couple of weeks, we've been saying that your atypical family can be used by God to do amazing things. And then we left that first week with how. And last week we talked about they pray for each other in the midst of conflict. And so today we're going to talk about how we actually talk through those. And so far in this series, we've met 2 different families. We met Adam and Eve, and we met the family of Abraham. Both of these families were atypical and imperfect in their own ways. Disobedience to God, lies, murder, conflict, disagreements, all these things that make these families very imperfect. And I doubt that your family's run into murder issues, but thinking that God can use them, think about what he can do with yours. And so we're going to be introduced to another family, and this story is about Isaac and Rebekah and their sons Jacob and Esau. Isaac was the son of Abraham, which means Jacob and Esau are Abraham's grandsons, but their story isn't the one of brotherly love, and it was an imperfect relationship from the start. So there's going to be a few verses in Genesis that we're going through, but just an idea, we're going to start in Genesis 25, and we're going to flip all the way through 33, kind of be summarizing a lot. I don't think you guys want a whole hour of me just reading to you. But of course, I'd encourage you to go back and read their whole story, as it is really a good one with some things that'll just have to be left out for the sake of time. But we're going to look at how this relationship started with them, and it's going to start in Genesis 25, verses 21 through 34. And so again, Genesis 25, starting at 21, it says, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. Then the Lord answered his prayer, and his Rebekah wife became pregnant. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, Why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, the brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Isaac, who had taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And once Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished, and he said to Jacob, Quick, have me some of that red stew, I'm famished. Jacob replied, First sell me your birthright "Look, I'm about to die." Esau said, "What good is a birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. Esau despised his birthright. So in this moment, what we see here is that Jacob is now taking the birthright, which is important, right? The oldest son, the firstborn, often has more rights and more things entitled to him than the younger one. And so in this moment, Jacob gets Esau to give that over to him for some stew, right? So it really wasn't something great that he actually did it. And we're going to hop over to chapter 27. And this is going to be a whole long one, and this is going to be how Jacob get Isaac's blessing through this. But basically, what happens is he's trying to figure out how to do this, and his mom ends up helping him because, again, we said Rebecca had a closer relationship with Jacob than Esau. And so he goes in, he poses as him, he brings some gifts for his father, and he disguises himself so he's a little bit more hairy. And so his father thinks that it is Esau. But in verse 30, we can start. It says, "After Isaac finished blessing him, blessing him and Jacob had left his father's presence, and his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, 'My father, sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing.' His father Isaac asked him, 'Who are you?' 'I am your son, your firstborn Esau.' Isaac trembled violently and said, 'Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate just before you came in, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed.' When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, 'Bless me too, my father.' But he said, 'Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing.' Esau said, 'Isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taking my blessing.' Then he asked, 'Haven't you reserved any for me?' Isaac answered Esau, 'I have made him lord over you, and have made all relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too.' And then Esau wept aloud." So right in this point, we see how these two brothers relate. There was competition, there was jealousy, there was deception, there was conspiracy, costumes, heartbreak, and then there was soup too. But there's a lot going on here. But the bottom line, with his mom's help, Jacob tricked his brother Esau to giving him something of value. With his mom's help, Jacob tricked his dying father into giving him a gift that was never intended for him. And instead of owning up to his bad behavior and trying to make it right with his brother, Jacob ran away again with his mom's help. And so, again, I encourage you to read through 27 if you have the time. That's 40-some verses to kind of dive into. And so I want you to imagine, though, being a part of that family. That's a lot of pain, deceit, cruelty, and certainly nothing compares to what I went through growing up as well. And then, so we're going to look later. We're going to jump to Genesis 32, verses 3 to 20. But that's not, so it's not the end of their story right there. Jacob ran away, but years later, he's married. He has children of his own, but he still hasn't spoken to Esau since he ran away. And now he's on the way to Esau's city. And so he knows that Esau has every reason to hate him, and even you could argue that he has a right to kill him. Jacob sends messengers with plenty of gifts, hoping to show that he's sorry. And so, again, we won't read through all of them, but we are just going to kind of skim through this a little bit. So again, in verse 32, chapter 32, it starts, "Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, 'This is what you are to say to the master of Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban, and he remained there till now. I have cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, merchants, and maidservants. Now I am sending this message to my lord, that I may find favor in your eyes.' When the messengers returned to him, said, 'We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you. 400 men are with him.'" So at that point, he's probably scared and thinks that his brother still hates him, and now he has all these people marching towards him, right? And now I want you to think about this idea of a tough conversation, right? I've had them before. You might have had them before. But there's nothing like the conversation they're about to have. And Jacob actually knows he needs to make it right with his brother, but who knows what Esau could be thinking at this moment. So Jacob is sending all these gifts to try and ease in, and so when he finally does meet his brother, it's not as angry, and all the gifts might have softened him. And so we'll get into 33 and we'll see their interaction here. And this will be in verses 4 through 12, right? After years of silence, he might have hated him, but we're going to kind of see how that plays out. So verses 4 through 12. It says, "But Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, and threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Esau looked up and saw the woman and the children. 'Who are with you?' he asked. Jacob answered, 'They are the children God has graciously given your servant.' Then the maidservants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all, Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, 'What do you mean by all the droves I met?' 'To find favor in your eyes, my lord,' he said. But Esau said, 'I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself.' 'No, please, I have found favor in your eyes. Accept this gift from me, for to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need.' And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted. Then he said, 'Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you.' But Jacob said to him, 'My lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for them, and the ewes and cows of nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my lord go on ahead of his servant, while I move along slowly at the pace of the droves before me, and that of the children, until I come to my lord and Sarah.'" So he reacted very differently than what we were potentially expecting, what Jacob at least was expecting. So after years of separation, he didn't let that fill him with hatred, with anger. Instead, he wanted to have a relationship with Jacob. And that relationship, that talk could have gone very differently, right? It makes sense that Jacob was afraid. He probably was ashamed to admit that he was wrong. And he was worried that Esau might retaliate. And Esau could have screamed, he could have been violent, he could have attacked him, and that could have been understandable again. He had stolen so much from Esau, and he never made it right. But again, against all odds, we see Esau didn't come to kill Jacob. He showed up with open arms, ready to have a conversation. And his willingness to have a conversation with Jacob, even after what was done to him, is pretty amazing. And it was absolutely essential to healing their relationship. And so many years after this story, many years after they reconciled, Jesus preached a sermon to a group of his followers. And part of that sermon was about having tough conversations. And it's in Matthew 18, verses 15 through 17, just really short. It says, "If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault. Just between the two of you, if he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector." Right? God loves us seeing us living peacefully together, right? But not the fake peace where we just smile and wave on Sunday mornings, but secretly are hating each other or have gossip about each other. He wants us to live in peace. And so like we learned a few weeks ago with Adam and Eve, God designed us to be in relationship with one another. And when we refuse to have these tough conversations with each other, it's going to separate us from each other. And not only that, when we hold on to the bitterness and anger, it's going to stop us from having a closer relationship with God. And so we've been saying that if you want to have God use your family to do atypical things, sometimes you have to be the first person to do something atypical. And that's what Esau did. And it's what Jesus teaches us to do. When you're hurt or you've been hurt by someone in your family, the typical response is staying angry, avoiding, and getting bitter. But Esau chose to do something different. He met with Jacob and had a tough conversation. And this might seem simple, but it's so atypical. Not so typical families are going to have those conversations. Right? And just like the tough conversation changed the relationships for the better, that was them willing to have those conversations. And if you can do that with your family, you can have the same change and impact that that conversation had on theirs. Every family is going to have conflicts, and they're going to need to be solved or made right. And atypical families are going to do that in a different way because they want those relationships to stay and to heal and to grow. And so making tough conversations, right, it's going to make room for healing, for repentance. It's going to help us learn to communicate with each other better. And it's going to give us a chance to create a solution that benefits everyone involved. And so how do you do that? How do you have those tough conversations? Well, there's a few different things that we can do. And so the first, you can simply start by asking, hey, can we talk about what happened? You know, what happened back there? How can we start to move to fix this? Next thing you can do after that is you can be patient when they share their feelings and perspective and not just talk over them or try to lead them in a different direction. Next, you can really listen to their point of view. Don't just hear them, but actually listen, right? When I was younger, My mom used to ask if I was listening. I said, no, but I hear you, right? There's a difference between those two things. I can hear noise, but doesn't mean I'm actually listening to it. Next, be honest about what you think and feel, even when it's hard. And then you have to admit when you're wrong, and then you have to value that relationship more than being right. So just a little recap, you can ask, be patient, really listen, be honest, admit fault, and value your relationship. So there's some 6 things that you can kind of use when you have those tough conversations with a family member, or this can even extend to people that you are just friends with. And I want you to think about right now a conflict that you have with someone. Now imagine how that conflict could be transformed if you were to have the tough conversations. How would it change your attitude? How would it change the person you're arguing with? And how would it change your family's pattern of behavior in the long term if you're constantly starting to work out things like this? So it can be tough. It can be scary to have these conversations. And our family members have more power to make us feel safe. But also on the flip side, they have more power than anyone to hurt us as well. And so if you're thinking of having a tough conversation, I encourage you to do that. And so when you leave today, as this ends, think about that. Are there any tough conversations that I need to have with my family, with my parents, with my siblings, with my cousins, aunts, uncles, whoever it might be? There might be something that God can put on your heart that needs to be talked about that hasn't been yet. So again, thanks for tuning in. This is week 3 of our series. We will pick up next week with our last one for Atypical. Trivia will be back next week, and we'll be talking about the future of that as well. And also, if you haven't heard, we're going to be having a drive-in church service this Sunday for Father's Day at 10 o'clock. So if you are interested in doing that, I look forward to seeing you at St. John's in the back parking lot at 10 o'clock on Sunday. So I'll close this in prayer, and I will see you next week. Lord, I just thank you for who you are. I thank you for the relationship that you've established with us. I just ask for the strength and just pray that we can be like Esau in these situations. And while we might have made mistakes, or maybe people have made mistakes against us, we can come prepared and ready to have difficult conversations with our family and listen and actually want to make them right. It can be hard. We can be stubborn, Lord, but I just pray that you soften our hearts and lead us in a way where we can be the change in our family. We can be the one that does the first atypical action to lead our family down a road that makes us atypical to the world, but a family that is following what you want. And so, Lord, I just ask for your blessings over that, the strength, the courage to go and follow the commands that you've given us. And I pray this in your name. Amen. So thanks again for tuning in this week, and I will see you later.